Hello everybody. My name is Matt Gritt. I'm a Senior Enterprise Solutions Engineer here at Sumo Logic. Today I will be taking you through application observability demo and showing you a few things that we're doing in that space. I'm going to take you through a few slides and then we'll do a bit of a demo and show you some of the capabilities. So the agenda for today is we'll talk about what is application observability. We'll look at some of the quick and effective troubleshooting. We'll look at our service map, what we're doing for traces and spans, and how we can combine that with our logging solution. And then at the end, we'll talk about our global intelligence and then how we can use that for our Kubernetes. And sorting that out. So bringing it all together in sort of one application of observability. So what is observability? Well, for us, it's basically making sure that we are able to see what the current state of our stack is, what our apps are doing, and what's going on in our system at any given time. The way we kind of do this is that we pull in the logs, metrics, and traces and spans to give us a rich context to what's going on. So we can see that in this diagram, we do a lot of monitoring. We're pulling in information for our unified alerts, and this really helps with the mean time to investigate. But the more data we get, the better context we have, the more information that we can provide for you. So with that, what we can do is we can see that the alerts will tell us what's going on, kind of thing. With a metric, we can say we can see that there's a CPU spike. That tells us that something's going on. And then we kind of can diagnose that. And with the extra information that we've got, we can make it faster for the mean time to diagnose. So this is when we're sort of coming in with, where is this happening? What is the problem area of our service or services that we're running perhaps? Or which particular pod or EC2 instance or, virtual machine that we're having issues with. And then, to get into that real true troubleshooting, that's when we sort of leverage, the powerful analytics engines that we have in Sumo Logic. So not only do we have the ability to unify and give you unified views of the logs and the metrics and the tracings, but we have that machine learning running over the top to make sure that we're able to help you get to that resolution. So again, this is sort of, making it easier for you to lower that mean time to resolve an issue. So just a bit of an overview. Sumo Logic can basically take any sort of information that you can, machine data information that you have. We don't mind if it's installed on-prem, in the cloud, we can probably get hold of it. I've worked for the company for 3 years and there's not been one device or instance that I've not been able to get some data out of, be that logs or metrics or now tracing and spans. So as you can see, we can get it from pretty much any device. Don't think that this is just what we're limited to. We can get it from any kind of logs or metrics and tracing. So Sumo Logic Observability. For this, some of the things that we've been doing is we've basically been trying to make it sure that it's easy to use. We have a great tool, but we want to make sure that it's easy to use for the people that are using it in the way that they want it. That's one of the reasons why we've really sort of pushed that you can take a lot of our out-of-the-box content, you can use it yourself, you can build up your own dashboards, you can build your own searches and queries, and create your own things for your own needs. We try and make this in a kind of a very sort of user-friendly aspect and make it really simple to use. So you can get on with your job and just see the data in a way that resonates with you. And also, to make it easier, we do that sort of auto discovery as often as we can, looking for those sort of where your system will change. We need to keep you informed of that. So not only do we have that, but we have that sort of visualization, and you're able to sort of have that visualized, and we can see that on the screen. We can set up alerts and things, so you don't always have to be looking at the screen. You can be getting on with your day job and then have alerts come in whichever channel that you want, be that like an email, be that in Slack or MS Teams, etc. And because we're collecting the data from various disparate systems, we can pull it all together and we can sort of give you that holistic view of what's going on in your system. And because we have all that information, we're able to drill down when and where we need to give you that information. So talking about the applied analytics. So we do have a lot of machine learning that basically allows us to quickly identify things that are outliers. They're not what is in the expected values. You can search across the logs, you can search across the traces, and you can search across the spans to help you with that investigations that you might be doing and that troubleshooting. And all of this is just to help you resolve the issue so you can get on with your normal job. And then lastly, because we have a lot of this information coming in, we're able to create benchmarks about how you compare with your peers. Again, all of this is we've got the data. It's anonymous, but it's kind of helps us sort of gauge where what are the kind of patterns or trends that we're seeing. And I'll talk a little bit about this later when it comes to sort of Kubernetes and what we're seeing in that kind of space. So we'll basically get into the demo of what you've sort of come here to see. So I'm just going to switch over to a dashboard which I've created for our sort of demonstration website. So we have a website which we call the Sumo Coffee website. It's a basically it's a kind of an app that basically allows you to order coffees, and it allows you to order sweets and delicacies and things like that, and then you punch through the order, and it we're monitoring the back end of it. So I've created this quick dashboard. I've used a few different things where I thought it might be kind of useful and interesting. I've pulled over how many visitors we've got over time, so you can see this is the number of visitors that are hitting our website for ordering that coffee. And you can see that this is over the last 60 minutes. So this is information that's obviously coming from our web server kind of information. And along that, I've actually sort of broken it down to say, hey, well, who is using our system? Who's actually coming to our system? So I can see that we've got mobile users, we've got some bots and things. We've got quite a few PCs that are actually coming to the website and using the website that way, and quite a few Macs. And a dashboard can have a lot of different things. So we can have, hey, if anything's going on that we need to, escalate to, maybe you'd want to have some information about that available on a dashboard. You can see that we've also got data about, what is the booking split over time. So green is espresso, and the light blue is cappuccino, and the darker blue is Americano. And you can see, throughout the last 60 minutes, what is the kind of, who's been doing what. So we can see here that just before, at this particular time, everybody was wanting espressos. But as you can see, it gets on through the later in the day. You can also see that Americanos at this particular time frame was the most common. So this is what was happening like 60 minutes ago, and this goes all the way up to what's happening now. And we can see how many bookings that we're having per hour. So we've got 277 bookings in the last 60 minutes. And we can see what that split is currently over that last 60 minutes. So if this was, our system, or this app is obviously made, we using lambdas and microservers, and we're kind of collecting all this information, and this is just one way of presenting some of the information to you. So we can see, what's been happening, orders over time. Is there anything there particularly that, particular time frames that are more important? And we can look at sort of seasonal data, and we can also see roughly what's happening, but price-wise, how many are being bought over that particular time. And we can also bring in sort of infrastructure metrics and stuff where, like, hey, is there anything running that's taking a little bit too long to work on, or what's going on? Are there any sort of bottlenecks or any of our systems that are not performing quite as they should? So we've got some sort of latency in orders. So we can see that some of our, over particular times, we had quite a few transactions that took a bit longer than we expected. And then we can sort of see sort of a pattern of what's been going on in the orders. Now, this is one of our outlier operators. So the blue line is basically how many orders are actually coming into our system. The sort of pink cloud around it is the expected values that we expect to see, basically. And this is based on your previous data points. So your previous data dictates roughly what the cloud should be. And you'll notice that we've got a few of these little pink triangles. These are outliers. These are a value that might fall outside what we're expecting. And we could use these for maybe alerting, saying, hey, look, we've had a drop in our orders. That seems a bit weird. Maybe send an email or a Slack message or an MS Teams message for say, hey, somebody might want to come in and look at it. So this is all well and good, but you want to dig down deeper into what's going on. So one of the things we can do is we can click on these and we can open up one of our little side panels, and it tells us a little bit more about what's going on. So we could go and have a look at the logs. We can have a look at the error logs of this particular order outlier, and we could have a look more information about that. But we could also go into our entities. So this is where we can see that we're pulling information about the particular container, the machine service. We can see that we've got some issues with the Sumo Logic coffee bar machine service, because that's a deployment. And we can see that it's part of the coffee bar namespace. So this allows us to sort of go, okay, we've got some more information about this. This could be quite relevant. So maybe we should actually just go into the namespace and have a look at it. We can see that the namespace has what's been going on the CPU and the memory and how many pods are running for this. And what we can do is we can open that up. Now I could open it up in a log search. I could look at traces or metrics or root cause explorer, or we could just open it up in our entity dashboard. So I'm just going to do that now. Now this brings us to a Kubernetes view of the world, because we're using Kubernetes to service this, this application. And it's pulling information about the coffee bar namespace. I'm going to just step up to the cluster to give you a slightly better view of what's going on. So you can see that we've got the cluster. This is reporting, giving us the reports over what's happening in our particular environment. So we can see what the cluster's average CPU is, memory utilization, etc. We can see how many CPUs we're doing. We're looking down here. We can see that we've got lots of different kube system pods are running. We've got one here that looks like it's a bit in trouble. Might want to have a look at that. And the more I scroll down, the more information I get about our cluster and the environment we're dealing with. So the further down you go, the more information you get in this particular one. So, I mean, that's pretty good, but that's sort of from the Kubernetes view. And we're mainly looking more at the application service view. So we can come over here, and what we can do is we can drop down to the application service view. So again, this is one of those things where it does a bit of auto discovery. It builds the hierarchy out of the data that it's getting from those things. You can see that we've got sort of two applications here. We've got a default application and a coffee bar application, which is what I'm going to click on now. Excuse me one moment. So you can see all of the different services that we've got running down here. We can see the latency of the services, the number of requests coming in, and the percentage errors. You can see that I've got quite a few percentage errors that are quite high on those. We've got some information about the applications themselves, the latency, the error percentages, and the requests. And then we've got more graphing showing the latency. And the more we get the information, we can start to say, hey, does this look similar to what we were expecting yesterday or last week this time or last month this time? We can see the requests coming in per second. We can see what's giving us the most data coming through and what the errors are coming through this. One of the ones we might want to look at is we might want to have a look at the coffee machine service. We can see here this drills down a little bit more and is just talking about that particular service and what's going on with that particular one. We can see that we've had a bit of a latency spike here. So that could be quite interesting. Now we've got all of these services, and so how do they hang together? So what I want to show you now is something called our service map. So I'm coming in, oh, sorry, my mistake. We go to new, we go down to service map. And this sort of generates a service map. It kind of discovers what's connected to what, as you can see. Now, you did notice that we had two different applications. I'm just going to make sure we click on the coffee bar one. So we can see this coffee bar app. You can see what's going on. You can see that we've actually got some red indicating that there is some issues on some of these. And you can see that the coffee bar is linked to the cache desk. You can see that it's linked to an external piece of an external machine or something, and that's having some issues. And you can see that it's also linked to like the coffee bar front end, and that goes off to an Amazon site as well. So you can see that's an off-site outside of our stack kind of thing. And you can see that we've got some of these that are running slightly, we've got warning indications that there's an anomaly here. And like before, we can click on these things. We can see that it's bringing up sort of contextual information about these things. And we can see that, I'm just going to click on coffee bar. We see we've got this latency, the requests, and we can open them in things. And again, we can start to look at this and go, okay, well, what's going on? We could go back and look at the entity dashboard, which you've seen before in the Explore tab. But we could go in and sort of go, okay, well, what's going on the services and how are they all working? So this is how we come into the traces. So I'm just going to click on the traces and open that up. And as you can see, this is like, it seems very busy, but this is all of the traces that are happening for the application, the coffee bar, in that particular service. And we can see information about the trace ID, what the root service is, the operation name, when it was started, the duration, etc. Now, for me, sort of doing some troubleshooting and things like that, I might want to have a look at, filter this down a little bit so that I would want to say, hey, I want to see where I've got any traces that have errors. So I'm just going to say anything greater than 0. So any of these have a more than 0 errors. So what is this really sort of telling me? So we can see that we've got this coffee bar front end. It's a click, it started at a particular time and a particular duration. And we have a number of spans. And you can see a bit of a breakdown here. So one of the great things about traces and spans is we can actually go into this. And this creates what we call a icicle diagram. So we can see that this particular trace starts at this end and ends at this end. And you can see all of the different services that it hits and what's going on. And that's then broken down in this section below. And you can see that there was a click, and then you can see there's a sort of a post request. And you'll notice that some of these have like a red bar across the top. Now that's to say that they've got errors in them. You can also see that there are all of the services that are linked to this particular trace, but you can also see that we've got some other ones that are associated with it. But what I want to kind of do is, if I only want to see the errors, I can just quickly click on the error spans, and the others are sort of faded out. And if I wanted to sort of look at what's going on in a particular issue, I can zoom in and go, oh yeah, I can see here that there's an issue here with this particular one, get beans. So I can click on this, and again, pulling up the information that we have. I can see a summary of this. I can see that it's get beans. It's, what the start times are, end times. We can see that it's a status code of 502. It was a URL get beans, so we can see that obviously there's something there. We've got some metadata about it, so we can see the metadata associated with these particular things. This is kind of the information that we got. We know that it's running in Ruby. We've got Kubernetes information as well. And this, whilst this might look quite verbose, some people might find this really, really useful for their own troubleshooting problems and issues. And, we can go into the entities, and if we wanted to, we could drive back into some of these and look at some of these in greater detail. But one of the things I want to sort of jump back to is, the summary. So we can see that there are issues with this get beans. Now, what we can do is, because we have the information about these, we can see that I can open the logs tagged with that particular span, and that will actually open up the logs associated with that particular service at that particular time that have that particular span ID or trace ID. I'm just going to do this one. So here you can see that we're sort of back into sort of like a normal sort of logging kind of view that you may have been aware of if you've used Sumo Logic before. We can see that this is the particular trace ID. We can see the kind of information that's coming through. This is an info, this is an error. So this particular one, there was a payment failed. What they tried to order, looks like they ordered a Cornetto suite kind of thing. We can sort of find out this information going forward with that particular trace ID. And we can still, we can use all of this information. We still have the same kind of log reduce and log compare that we've had previously. And you can set up alerts like you have done always. But this allows us to look at that particular trace ID or span ID. So I know that we haven't got very much longer to go. So I just want to do a couple more about spans and very, very quickly talk about the Kubernetes one if we have time. So one of the other things that we've been able to do is we've been able to take these spans and sort of use this information now to use it just as the way we've been doing sort of logs and things. So some of the things that we've been able to do, things like, we were looking at that particular one. It was a service. I want it to be looking at it. Well, that last issue was something to do about they didn't have enough money. So maybe we want to have a look at the cash desk or something like that. And then we want to sort of, that's good, but sort of what do we want to see? I want to see the sort of like the duration. I want an average duration. And then I might want to group the details by, in 1 minute chunks. And I want to see the HTTP status code. And then I'm just going to run it. So this is very similar to the log search type things that we have, or the metric type search things we have. So here you can see that we're pulling out the information that we need. The span started, what the operation was, the status code, etc. And we can aggregate these and have them as, line graphs or maybe columns, whatever we need to present those pieces of information. And this is what's been happening in the last 15 minutes. Maybe I want to do that up to, say, the last 3 hours, making sure I press the little button to say go. So this allows us to see, what's been going on over with that particular service. And then we can see that there's been some issues here. This is rather high duration. Maybe we could go back and have a look at that and do some troubleshooting and make sure that it's working correctly. And one of the other good things that I kind of want to sort of show is, whilst this is a span, what we can do is a little button here called Open in Search. When you click it, it does exactly that. It opens it up in our search. So you can now search across the spans. You can see the information that you've been bringing back. You can see that these are 200 and 400s. So you can see that kind of graphing again. And all of the log type graphing and charting that we have is available. You can actually go back into the messages themselves, and you can see what the raw logs and information is. Exactly the way you've been able to use logs, you can now use for your traces and spans, which is like, that's going to be when you set that up with alerts and things, that's where it starts getting really, really powerful, because you're getting that whole unified view of the metrics told me something was going wrong, the logs told me what was going wrong, and the traces and span told me when and for how long it was going on. With those pieces of information, you can really hone in on what the problem is and lower that mean time to resolve, mean time to investigate, and mean time to diagnose. So that's kind of what I have for the application observability. I hope that's been useful. I'm quite happy to ask questions for you. I know that we're sort of up for our 30 minutes. There was one thing that we did really want to talk about very briefly, and that's that we can use the global intelligence for Kubernetes. Couple of things on this. This is one of the ones that is basically allowing you to start to look at the pieces of information that are coming through from your Kubernetes and comparing it with other clients. I'm just going to switch over to a slide to give you a kind of a view of what we're talking about. So you probably have a simple app, similar to this: load balancer, payment gateway, the deployments and what's going on, an account service, and then a database. When you're in Kubernetes, every sort of pod, everything needs to be have the it's kind of CPU set, its request set, the information set about what is the lower limit and the higher limit. Now, what we've been finding about these is that about 40% of these containers are over-provisioned for a CPU or memory, and 40% of them may be under-provisioned. Now, that creates risk and also cost. If you're over-provisioning something and you're wasting its capability, so that's going to cost you. But if you're under-provisioning the CPU and the memory, you're more likely to have failures, out of memory, crash backup loops, those kind of things. So your risk is escalated. So, this kind of information is that we're able to have a look at that pieces of information and basically give you some sort of what we call action plans to do for your sort of Kubernetes instance, so that your applications can run more efficiently and not having infrastructure issues affecting your services. So with that, we have the Kubernetes global intelligence. So we can see, this is basically benchmarking my particular company with globally. So we can see that globally, there's around about 3.5 clusters per client. And we've got 3, so that's okay. We can see that we've got how many deployments. So that's the nearly 200 deployments in particular company. We can see that we've got a lot more. It's not surprising. We use it a lot. We can see how many namespaces. So there's around about 45 namespaces per customer. We're only using 17, etc. This is like a really good kind of benchmark to see how you are. But some of the things that we can really do is we can start to see more of a summary on your deployment. So we can start to see, what's been going on, what is how much CPUs we're doing, and the risk. Now, I wanted to make sure that we are just talking about. Oh, come on! It's being slow today. I apologize. So what we'd have in here was we would pick our particular cluster. It doesn't seem to be coming up at the moment. So, and also, I'm looking at 50% of our history, which means that values would be the lower the history percentage, the more ephemeral our data would be. So, we might have more gaps and things like that to give us a better kind of view of those ephemeral things. Ah, cool. So I'm just looking at that coffee bar app that we talked about previously. So this is, looking back at this, we can see what's been going on, etc. It seems all quite good. That seems quite, reasonable. So this gives us an overview, and we can see the CPUs and the memory, and we can see, what would be a good cost-optimized view, a balanced view, and a more reliable view. So you can see which one you want to go for. Because what we're trying to achieve is we're trying to achieve somewhere in between where it's cost efficient, but not low enough as to cause you issues. So that's when we have these action plans. So this is an action plan for the CPU usage of those particular containers. So what I'm going to go and say is I'm just going to go back to R50 because I want to be a bit more ambiguous. And I want to go for that particular cluster. And this dashboard will give you information. It will tell you about what it is that we're trying to do. The optimization scenarios that we do, because you see up here we're going for a balanced, and we're trying to get that middle bound. And this is basically where you start to see this is what you have, and this is what we recommend. And you can go through this and you can say, okay, I'm looking at all of these different things. There might be a change in some of these. So some of these are like saying, hey, you've got this one is over provisioned. We might suggest you lower it down to this, and you get the same, you get the same performance without any issues, and it will save you money. And then you look over here at, say, the coffee bar clicker. You've got this amount of CPU set up, but honestly, that would be you'd be having issues. Your risk profile would be higher. So we suggest you put it up to this particular value. So you can use this to feed back into your system, because you've got to configure those containers with those kind of like 4 values, the CPU, the requests, the memory, and things. And we've got action plans for all of them. So with this kind of information, this really does help you sort of set up which of those pods and clusters and things are need to be adjusted for you to get a better deal, because that tweaking is where you can save big cost benefits. So again, this is like from an action plan for the memory. You can see that this particular, you've got just over 500 meg in this coffee bar clicker, but the information that we've analyzed previously would really recommend, hey, putting it up to nearly a gig of memory. That would be really, really good for you, because you're not going to get all of the issues of the server not starting up, running out of memory kind of thing. So this is a way for you to get the details out of the system and pull it back into your own configuration, for you to actually know what the actual value should be, as opposed to guessing for them. So I think that's kind of what we have for that last bit, just showing you that we're trying to get that middle ground of what is good for you with your the setup and configuration of your pods for the service that you might be running, etc. And that's just like a little thing where we have data that we can use and give to you so that you can do that configuration and be a little bit more leaner, as well as having less issues. So I hope that helps. Thank you very much for listening to me for this nearly 40 minutes. I did want to end on a last point. We do have our Illuminate conference coming up. Bear in mind that it is in September the 29th and 30th for the Australia, Pacific, Japan area, and India, obviously. Just to be aware that it is on a different date, because they are American dates, not our dates. So go and have a look at that. Sign up for that. That will be going into a lot more of these in details. We've got a lot more new, interesting things to talk about and show you. So yeah, sign up for that. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. So thank you very much. And don't forget, if you haven't got us, you can start up a free trial. So if there are no questions, I can't see any questions coming in. The chat has the link to Sumo Logic. Thank you very much, James, for helping out today. And that's it from me. Thank you very much. Have a good day.